Hello guys, welcome back onto the channel. This is a new segment on the channel called Road Talk. I mentioned this segment on my very first video of the year called Channel Update, and in this segment I'm going to be talking about a lot of different topics, like stuff that I'm into, stuff that I'm not into, stuff that I'm nostalgic about, all sorts of stuff, mostly about racing games. And to kick things off, I wanted to talk a little bit about the banning of two cars in Forza Horizon 4, and these are the Bone Shaker and the Track-Tor. Now, first let me get something out of the way. I hated the Bone Shaker, and if I'm honest, I think I used that car maybe once or twice online, and it's not because of a moral high ground thing or anything like that. It's just that I hated the fact that in order for me to be competitive, I was pretty much forced to use that car. And I very much preferred to spend some time trying to find a car that could go against the Bone Shaker rather than just joining in the crowd and picking the same car as everybody else. And I was successful to some extent. I managed to beat plenty of Bone Shakers, but at the same time I lost to a lot of Bone Shakers as well. And the same thing goes to the Track-Tor. Track-Tor in B-Class dirt racing was pretty much unbeatable. But again, I put some time in back when I was still playing dirt racing. These days I don't play dirt racing anymore, not even cross country. And back in the day, it's not that long ago, but back when the Track-Tor was still allowed in multiplayer lobbies, I managed to beat plenty of Track-Tors, but I also lost a lot of races to the Track-Tor as well. So there are both sides to the coin. And I know that a lot of people are gonna say, oh, but I managed to beat plenty of Bone Shakers easily. Yes, you and me both, sister. You're not special. If anything, this just goes to show how oblivious you are to the fact that there are plenty of other people of varied skill levels who also happen to play the game, so it's not about you. The fact that you beat certain overpowered cars with ease doesn't mean that those cars are not overpowered. That's not how things work. And the fact is, Bone Shaker and the Track-Tor, they were both overpowered. But that's not the issue, to me personally. Now, if you played Forza Horizon since the very first one, you know that Forza Horizon games have always been about OP cars. Forza Horizon 1 had a lot of OP cars, Forza Horizon 2 had a lot of OP cars, Forza Horizon 3 had a lot of OP cars, and Forza Horizon 4 isn't any different. Part of the fun, to me personally, is discovering the next OP car. Sometimes I'm racing with a fairly OP car in Forza Horizon, then I get beaten fairly easily by another car. Okay, this could be very well that the player is faster than me, but the first thing that I'm gonna try to discover is how good that car was, and most part of the time turns out that that car is actually even more powerful than the car that I was using. That's how I learned the game. That's how I discover a lot of the cars, a lot of the tune setups, because I try a lot of tune setups before taking the car online. So this also answered one of the most asked questions that I get on the channel, which is, how do I know which car is good? How do I know which tune setup is good? As far as cars goes, it's pretty much get beaten by some and then you're gonna know which cars are good. And tune setup is trial and error. There's no secret. The problem is that Forza Horizon doesn't seem to have enough OP cars to compete in certain class. So there are certain class that they are gonna be pretty much dominated by one or two cars. And the banning of these two cars is not gonna do anything other than just make some of the other overpowered cars more prominent than ever. And that's exactly what's been going on. You still have your Alfa Romeo TZ2s, you still have your Ford GTs, you still have a lot of overpowered cars being used in online lobbies pretty much all the time. What are the developers are gonna do next? They're gonna keep banning cars until nothing is left? I don't think so. And that's why I think it was a mistake to ban the cars. I know that a lot of the community celebrated the fact that the cars were banned. I don't blame them. And if I'm honest, I wasn't sad to see it go, but I don't think that's the right approach. One thing that's become apparent to me, especially from watching a lot of I think I've watched maybe, I think I only missed one of the live streams where they showed the next update. All the other ones I've watched all the way through. And one thing that became pretty apparent to me was that the developers don't seem to play the game online. Now, this could be for a number of reasons, I'm not gonna get into that. But it has become apparent because I remember as clear as day when someone asked, right at the end of each live stream, they usually open the live stream for the audience questions. And one of the questions that people asked is if they were planning on doing some rebalancing on the Bone Shaker back when the Bone Shaker was the king of A-Class. And I remember as clear as day when the developers said that there were no plans to rebalance the cars because that would require some reworking of the systems in the game. That makes sense because the game has tuning setups that would mess everything up. But then the developer said that if they think the Bone Shaker is unbeatable, then they don't know the cars well enough. And that to me made pretty clear that they do not play that game online, because if they play the game online, they would never say that. And that's part of the problem to me. That's, I think, the biggest problem the game has. The developers don't play the game online, at least to the extent required to notice some of the most glaringly obvious problems. And that's hard to understand from the player perspective, but I also understand the developer side, and I don't blame them. These days, the development cycle of post-launch content has become so fast-paced that it's very difficult for the developers to have enough time to properly test things before releasing it out to the public. And that's where I think Forza Horizon 4 would benefit immensely from a program similar to what Sea of Thieves had. So in case you're unfamiliar with Sea of Thieves, in case you've never heard about the game, in case you've never seen a video, in case you've never played the game, Sea of Thieves has a program called Sea of Thieves Insider. This program has been available since the closed alpha days. I've been part of the game, of the Insiders program since the closed alpha days. And back in the day, you would have to sign up for the program, and then they would choose people. Like, they wouldn't allow everybody in, but they would choose in waves. I was part of the second wave that got the invite to join the closed alpha days. And what those sessions consisted of was pretty much work in progress builds, where you get access to a lot of stuff that the developers were working on. So back in the day, they were working on new mechanics. I remember the very first session that I joined in. You didn't even have the bananas to eat to replenish your health. So that just goes to show how early it was. But little by little, build by build, they started adding more stuff. They started adding stuff to the cannons, adding bananas, adding new mechanics, rebalancing the gameplay, rebalancing this and that, and so forth. And all of that was done based on player feedback. The players would provide feedback on bugs, on crashes, on things that weren't working as they were intended to, on things that would be cool if they added. And fast forward a year later, the game came out, but they kept the Insider program and they opened it up to the general public. So these days, pretty much anybody can join in on the Insider program. All you have to do is sign up for the program with your Xbox Live account. Then you have to download a build that's separate to the main game, so that's not gonna screw up your game save, because that's a separate game file. It's a separate save file as well. And then you're good to go. Then you're gonna have access to all of the builds that they're testing before releasing the next major update out to the public. So these builds happen, I think, once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. It's been a while since I checked one of these out, but these days it's a good chance for people to know to learn what's coming to the game. Of course, you have to agree to an NDA for obvious reasons, but as soon as you agree to the NDA you're in, you get access to all the stuff, and the players provide feedback on all sorts of stuff to developers. And when the developers release the update to the general public, it's a solid update. Of course, there are problems. It's always gonna have problems. There are certain stuff that you're not gonna be able to test unless you release it to a wider audience. But for the most part, the updates are pretty solid, things work as intended, the bugs are very minor, and it works. And that's why I think Forza Horizon should have something similar. If they created some sort of Forza Horizon Insider program, they could release early builds to people who are part of the program, so people could test out the new cars, the upcoming cars, test out new features, test out anything that the developers plan to include on the upcoming update. And they could get feedback from people. So with this program, the developers could have a better grasp of what cars feel out of place in certain classes, what cars are not that good. So they could rebalance these cars right out of the gate, so that later they shouldn't have to rebalance anything. It would be pretty much locked on, and any balancing issues that might occur at a later date, it wouldn't be this big. But this would require a reworking of the infrastructure they have. You need to have an infrastructure to support this type of program. It's not something that's so easily done. And I have another solution that I think would be a lot more elegant and a lot easier for the developers to implement into the game. Now, I'm not a game developer, I don't know how easy that would be, but from my perspective, this solution that I'm going to be talking about in a bit would be far easier to implement than just building a whole infrastructure from scratch to support an insider program. That could be something that they could plan to do for the next Forza Horizon game. I think would be a great idea, just like the Forza Motorsport developers are gonna start doing with the upcoming Forza Motorsport game. They're gonna be testing it alongside the public so that they can get feedback while the game is being developed. And I think this is a great approach and very well suited for a good game. Now, what developers of Forza Horizon 4 could do right now to mitigate some of these issues is very simple, and the tools for that are available in the game. So as things are right now, you have your online adventure lobby. So let's say you joined in a quick play lobby or a ranked play lobby. You're gonna see a card right in front of the screen, and the card is gonna say what type of race it is, the weather conditions, the season, and also the car class, right? Now, what they could do to prevent people from choosing the same OP cars over and over again to exhaustion is add categories to these races as well. So, in case you don't know, each of the cars in the game belong to different categories. So you have your Super GTs, you have your GTs, you have your hot hatches, you have your modern hatches, you have your vans and utilities, you have your classic racers, your off-road monsters, you name it. There are tons of different categories. What they could do is, instead of saying, for example, here's a road racing playlist set in autumn in a class, they could say, here's a road racing playlist set in autumn in a class in a GT car. That would narrow down the selection of cars drastically. So the Bone Shaker, I think, falls under the Track-Tor category, if I'm not mistaken. You wouldn't be able to choose a Track-Tor because the playlist requires you to choose a GT car. And the next playlist, same thing. Let's say, for example, the next playlist is an S1 road racing playlist set in winter in S1 class. Of course, I've already said that, but in track toys category. Then you would be able to choose your Bone Shaker, whatever. But this would prevent people from choosing the same cars over and over and add a lot of variety to the races. As it is, if you're joining road races, you're pretty much limited to A, S1, and S2 classes, and these classes span across all of the cars available in the game in those classes. And that's a problem. That's why you have these OP cars dominating the races, because there's no limitations to which cars you can choose for certain lobbies. And I think this would go a long way to not only mitigate the OP problem. I don't think that's a problem, but you know what I'm talking about, the Bone Shaker specifically. And this would go a long way to mitigate the OP thing, and also it would add a lot more variety to the game than it currently is. There is. And also, this would help preventing from certain upcoming cars that they're going to be releasing throughout 2020 from becoming OP cars, because they could limit the selection to the categories. I think that's a much more elegant solution, a solution that could very much work, and they could do this with the tools that they have currently available. I don't think that's going to be a huge issue for them to implement that. And I'm pretty sure the developers at some point have thought of that. This is nothing groundbreaking or anything, but this is just a solution that I thought of and I felt like sharing with the community. So what do you think of the suggestion that I made? Do you think this could work? Do you think this is something you would like to see in the game? Let me know in the comments down below. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more Forza Horizon 4 content, share the video with your friends and on your social media. It helps me out a lot and I really appreciate the help. And I hope to see you guys on the next one. Bye.